Good afternoon. My name is Ben Glassman, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio. Joining me at the podium is Assistant Special Agent in Charge Mauricio Jimenez of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Also present with us this afternoon are leaders of other law enforcement agencies with whom DEA has partnered to make today's announcement possible, including Lieutenant Colonel Matt Carper and Sergeant John Sullivan of Dayton Police, Major Gary Allen from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, Chief Deputy Darrell Wilson from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and Lieutenant Lou Turner of Springfield Police. Today we are announcing an indictment that was returned by a federal grand jury here in Dayton earlier this month and unsealed today. The indictment charges 19 people with conspiring to traffic large quantities of fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. Now, before I go further, I should say, as always, that allegations in indictment are just that. They're allegations. They're not evidence. And every defendant in this case, like every case, is presumed innocent unless and until that person is proven guilty with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt in court. So please keep that in mind as I make these further comments about the facts. According to the allegations in the indictment, this organization was based here in Dayton and used 13 residences throughout the greater Dayton area to process, store, and distribute drugs and cash proceeds. But its reach was far beyond Dayton. The indictment includes allegations about the organization's activity in Kentucky, among other places. The indictment alleges that this organization possessed effectively kilogram quantities of fentanyl, moved hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, bought luxury goods with their profits, and fled from federal task force officers on multiple occasions. And now all of that is over. The specific charges in the indictment are conspiracy to traffic drugs, substantive drug trafficking counts, and using communication facilities to commit these crimes. Every defendant charged faces a mandatory minimum of at least 10 years in prison. Now let me turn the podium over to Assistant Special Agent in Charge Jimenez, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the investigation and about today's arrests. Then I will return and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Attorney General Glassman. Good afternoon. My name is Mauricio Jimenez, and I'm the Assistant Special Agent in Charge for the DEA. I'm responsible for all the Southern District of Ohio. It's a good day for Dayton, Montgomery County, and the surrounding communities. This was a DEA-led joint investigation with the Ohio State Highway Patrol, Dayton Police Department, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Springfield Police Department, and the Middletown Police Department that lasted over 9 months and culminated in 19 federal indictments and the execution of 17 federal search warrants. Let me point out that today's enforcement actions were not possible without the assistance of the following law enforcement agencies: the FBI, the United States Marshal Service, the Warren County Drug Task Force, Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Miami County Sheriff's Office, Tip City Police Department, Huber Heights Police Department, Troy Police Department, West Carrollton Police Department, Trotwood Police Department, and my other two offices, the Columbus District Office and the Cincinnati Resident Office. As you can see, it's pretty large enforcement activity this morning. The warrants resulted with 12 subjects in custody. There's several that are turning themselves in, with seizures of money, multiple firearms, and different quantities of controlled substances, including fentanyl. This was a Dayton-based poly drug trafficking organization led by Crawford Bogle and Savan Pope. This organization distributed multi-kilogram quantities of fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine on a monthly basis throughout Southwest Ohio. The investigation has spanned multiple states, including Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Arizona, and California. And this organization was supplied by a Mexican-based organization, obviously in Mexico, that was smuggling controlled or illicit substances into the United States. Although the arrest happened today, the investigation doesn't end here, as we're going to continue investigating this organization's source of supply. So we anticipate more arrests, seizures, and search warrants in the future. Sure. My first name is Mauricio, M-A-U. R-I-C-I-O. Last name is J-I-M-E-N-E-Z. Assistant Special Agent in Charge. Oh, thank you.
So as ASAC Jimenez mentioned, this investigation is ongoing. We have taken down this regional trafficking organization based here in Dayton, but as he just mentioned, we're not satisfied with that. We're going to continue the investigation to find the sources of supply, wherever they may be, whether throughout the United States or in other countries, and they will also be brought to justice. I am happy to answer any questions that you have. Well, I can't speak to specifically how it first started, but what I can tell you in a little bit of, I don't mind sharing a little bit more detail even than ASAC Jimenez just mentioned, that this investigation, which has been DEA-led, has been ongoing for months and months and has included search warrants, as he mentioned, wiretaps, surveillance, tracking warrants, phone ping devices. So it's been a very thorough investigation that's been going on for months to make sure that we were able to take down every member of this organization today. So I want to try to make sure that I don't say anything that will prejudice anyone's right to a fair trial. But obviously, we are talking about an organization that was trafficking in deadly drugs. So I believe, as the Assistant Special Agent in Charge mentioned, actually, as the indictment actually alleges, there's one allegation of the indictment where these folks had, on one particular occasion, effectively a kilogram of fentanyl. And if you think about the tiny dose of fentanyl, how deadly that can be, we're talking kilograms of suspected fentanyl, and I believe there were multiple kilograms of suspected fentanyl that were seized during the arrests and execution of the 17 search warrants today. So this kind of activity involving fentanyl and the other drugs is deadly activity. And we are talking about an organization that was using hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. That is the allegation in the indictment, much of which has been seized. And then on top of that, we are talking about individuals who, according to the allegations in the indictment, encountered federal task force officers and fled from them on more than one occasion. So all of that is activity that that we can't have here in Dayton or anywhere in the Southern District of Ohio, and that's why I'm grateful to all of these law enforcement agencies for the hard work that they've put in to make sure that we've been able to make these arrests today.
Talk about the two main guys. Are the two main guys in custody?
Yes. Yes, Crawford Bogle and Savon Pope are the first two people who are listed in the indictment. They are both in custody right now.
And they're from Maine?
Yes.
What?
Well, confining myself to the charges that are in this indictment, yes, we have the full scope of this organization charged in this indictment, and arrests have taken place today and are in progress for those few people who are still not in custody. But what I want to make clear, and as the Assistant Special Agent in Charge mentioned, they weren't making the drugs here in Dayton, right? They're getting the drugs from someplace else. And that part of the investigation is still ongoing. So ultimately, we try to make sure that the local organization is completely dismantled. And when I say local, by the way, I'm talking about folks who are operating out of Dayton, but as ASAC Jimenez mentioned, had reach into other states. But we're going to continue the investigation, DEA together with its law enforcement partners, to find out where in this country and in other countries those drugs were ultimately coming from. So in answer to your question, we've got this full organization here. This was, I think it's fair to say, among the most significant drug trafficking organizations in this region. But we're not going to stop until we have the ultimate sources of supply wherever they may be.
How much swear anonymity guns?
Let me grab.
They want to remain anonymous. Can you assure them if they come forward with information about individuals dealing in this particular case? And as big as the footprint that you have with all the different jurisdictions here, can a person still remain anonymous? And is there a tip line for them to call you?
Do we have a way for? Yes. We do have a tip line for folks who have information regarding the activities here, and we will provide that after this press conference. But what I can tell you is that we're talking about an investigation led by DEA with law enforcement throughout this region, and including other federal agencies, state and local agencies. So all of law enforcement is working together, and I can assure anybody who is a witness or who has information about this kind of activity, they can come forward safely. Law enforcement wants to have that information and always welcomes the cooperation of the public. We appreciate it.
How much drugs, how many guns, how much did you guys collect this 19
So I think we executed 17 search warrants today. It's always a little bit of a tricky business for me as the prosecutor to talk about things that are not in the indictment. So I think I want to stay away from that. But what I can tell you is that there was cash, there were guns, and there were multiple kilograms of suspected fentanyl that were seized today. And if we want any more detail, I'll turn the podium back to ASAC Jimenez if you'd like to provide any additional detail.
Usually on the day of the seizure, we don't normally comment on that. We have to send all the controlled substances to our lab to get an accurate count. The same thing with the money. We take it to a local facility for count. So as Attorney General Glassman did say, we did seize all those items, but I cannot go into specifics.
Large amount of money, large amount of guns, large amount of...
Considerable. I think anytime any amount of drugs hits the street, it affects somebody, be it one person or 100 million people. For us, we don't look at it in that way. We try to stop it as best we can before it hits the street. So I can't really tell you exactly how many people it would absolutely affect it.
When your agents encountered these people at other times they ran, did you already have warrants for their arrest at that time, or did they just know who you were and they were like, didn't know that they knew that you knew what they were doing?
All I can say is that they ran when they knew the police were behind them. How's that? And I can't really get into specifics because of adjudication reasons. So, but they did run on several occasions.
How many houses? How many houses in Clark County? How many houses in Montgomery County did you guys serve these search warrants?
I don't have that specific information in front of me. I know it was, if I'm guessing off the top of my head, I want to say 15 residences. So, it's surrounding areas. It's surrounding counties as well.
Of the individuals who have been arrested, would your department be willing to give up photos on those individuals?
We'll make arrangements through the U.S. Attorney's Office to release that information.
Horses?
Not that I'm aware of. I do know they had an affinity for vehicles. As far as what other items, I don't have that information with me right now.
One more question.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was going to say we should probably refer to the indictment, which specifies activity relating to cars and that sort of thing. Just refer you back to the indictment. Also refer you back to the indictment for specifying, I believe, 13 residences that were used as specific properties where drugs were stored or processed or that sort of thing. And I think you'll see if you look at those 13 residences listed there in the greater Dayton area. I wouldn't say all of them are within Dayton, but they're within the greater Dayton area.
Why is this important? Why is it important for you to do this, to invest this much time?
It is crucial for us if we're going to stem the tide of our opioid epidemic, and we're going to make sure that we then don't get into the next epidemic. We don't want to end the opioid epidemic and then have a stimulant epidemic. So we have to make sure that we are engaged in prevention, enforcement, and treatment. They all have to work together. What we're talking about today is enforcement. And if you don't have one of those three things, the other ones aren't going to work. So it's crucial for us to put in whatever resources are necessary to ensure that we are doing everything we can to stop the flow of illicit drugs here in Dayton and throughout the region. Once we do that, with people knowing more about it, so we have prevention going, we can have an opportunity for people to get into treatment, decrease the customer supply, and that is how together we are turning the tide of this crisis. Thank you.